Okay, we're going to try and get started on time if we can. So grab yourselves a seat and we'll get underway. Welcome to the briefing. This briefing has been about 9 months in the making and we're finally underway and happening. So we're very proud to have Matt with us. And I'll just go through a quick introduction of Offis for those of you that are not familiar, although most of you already really know who we are. And then we'll get underway most of the time for Matt. If you have a phone, if you could mute it, that'll be good. There's also free Wi-Fi as well, and it's portside 21 Wi-Fi. And if you need the facilities...
Sorry, just say that again. Well, I can't read it from here.
It says portside 21.
Thank you very much.
It'll be free. Do I need to speak up?
No.
Sorry? Very funny. Look, cloud automation, this is the slide I put up for cloud automation because it covers pretty much everything people want to do in the cloud. They have some infrastructure in the office somewhere or in a co-location and they want to, automatically, there you go, fix it up, automatically put that into the cloud. And once it's already in the cloud, they want to have auto scaling and beautiful, it's all there. I can grow more servers as I need it or shut them down if I need to. They might want to put servers in different geographies. Some of you are here who want to have servers in the US, the UK, India and Chile have been mentioned by some of our other customers. You might want to do something called DevOps, develop some applications to launch your own servers and infrastructure. People are very into that. You might want to have that for DR and HA purposes. That's very more capable to be done right now in the cloud than it is in a traditional sense, so that's really good. You might want to launch some service to do some load testing and security testing. You can do security testing that will break things, and load testing will generally take things to its limit and break it. You want to launch that into the cloud, run it, and then shut it down and make any changes you want. So typically that's what people want. How people want this to happen is, whoa, the word automatically went missing. Automatically, they just want, boom, everything to happen. You know, it's not like that, obviously. It's not, IT is not in a dreamland. I got this from one of the sales guys from RightScale. So you do have to do a bit of work behind that, and that's pretty much what we'll cover in this session today. For those of you that don't know Offis, as far as we're concerned, we had our own data center, about 30 racks worth of servers, and we're now got service provision in all different public cloud environments. We want to help you design that infrastructure, and we will do the security services for that infrastructure. We're also looking to partner with different vendors to provide a higher level of services like CRM systems, analytical systems, and so on. So that's kind of where we fit. We're independent of cloud infrastructure, really, even on-premise. Yes, sir.
When you say professional services infrastructure design,
yep.
I assume you don't mean designing from the servers up. You're talking a slightly higher level than that.
Yeah, we're going to. They're going to have the CPU, the RAM, and storage already here. So we're not going to design how much RAM you need. We're not going to put sticks into servers for you. But once you go to that level where you have an infrastructure as a service, we will design it at that level. So if you take infrastructure that's in AWS, you want to migrate that to SoftLayer or Rackspace or something else, you have to know about the networking components. You have to map out all the servers that can work with that. How do the applications call each of their segments? Matt will cover some of those a bit later, but that's the next layer of abstraction up. In terms of a public cloud, private cloud, multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, we have our own racks. AWS were in here a couple of years ago. Rackspace have launched. Windows have launched. Azure has launched. SoftLayer just launched recently. VMware will come. Anyone want to guess what that logo is going to be? Oh, it will probably be Google. They're the big ones. Once you have your cloud infrastructure running, you still need someone to manage it and to run it, because you will get alerts, you will get patching you have to do, you will get security tests you have to do, and these are all the services that we do on top of the cloud infrastructure. So if you want to focus on your application, your business, we're the operational component of that. So in terms of 24/7 security, patching, monitoring, alerting, troubleshooting, dashboard, all that really sits around the professional services component. If you look at our P&L, it used to start with the word servers and the income we got from servers. It's now got professional services. We're going to be professional services led. So the idea is we understand your business and where you want to go, how to translate that into infrastructure, and we will do the auto scaling, the code review, the load testing, the infrastructure design, all of those components. We're going to be led by understanding your business, translating that into IT, and then using infrastructure that's available to run that. So I'm going high speed here. About 6 months ago, maybe longer, 9 months ago, maybe longer, I sent a message off to RightScale.com, and Matt called me the next morning and said, hey, you sent a message through. I can't do the American accent, but we started the discussion. We had probably 6 or 7 different providers we were looking at for a cloud management platform. You know, we're pretty much like you guys. We have 30 racks worth of servers running mission critical applications and DevOps and internal and a whole bunch of stuff. And we needed to make that better, faster. If you read this sentence here, and you can read it in your own time, but basically it's what most people are looking for. I want to go to the cloud, I want to automate workflow, I want to get things single pane of glass, I want to get things working better, faster. The Automagically component. A few things in our list that we highlighted here. You know, we want to minimize the manual checklist to create service. You know, we want to remove the high touch. We want to minimize that. We want to standardize. We want to, you know, the unified reporting of private and public cloud. You know, we wanted ability for our customers to provision their own service. Spoke to Sean a second ago about exactly doing that. We want to automate workflows. You know, if IIS hangs, I want to restart it, that kind of stuff. I want a service catalog where it'll be easier to provision things that are already grouped by certain requirements. Version control, you know, centralized access, transparent pricing. If we run your infrastructure in the public cloud, whatever your public cloud provider would charge you is what we charge you. Complete transparency. If AWS charges you $1,000, here's a $1,000 bill, here's a copy of their invoice. We will only charge you for the management layer that we do and the professional services that we do, as an example. And we didn't want to be constrained by geographies. So pretty much a standard list of requirements that most enterprises would want. We then had a couple of specific requirements. We want to make sure we work with VMware because we have that in our data center and you probably do too. SoftLayer, AWS, Azure, and you know, we had Google onto that. And there's some specifics that we wanted to put together in that list. We came up with a wish list of things that we wanted, and there were 35 functional categories over 33 pages. And we said, James, here you go. You're hired full-time to do nothing but test this. You know, and we had a lot of other part-time people working on that for about 6 months, 130 odd pages that went into this test. And you know, we were on the phone to half a dozen people within RightScale and 3 or 4 other vendors. Ended up being a shootout between 2. And at the end of all of those, end of last year, we ended up with that. There you go. I just made that up just then. So we ended up with a partnership with RightScale that we think is the right solution, the right answer. We spent a lot of time and $250,000 banging on this to make sure we get the right solution, because really our partnership is the basis for our business going forward in terms of our cloud management platform. And it's a big portion of what we do. So we're not going to get it wrong. We spent a lot of time doing it. And without any further ado, Matt.
Thank you, Chy.
Give you that.
Steal that off.
Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming today. I appreciate you taking time. I'm sure some of you have kids at home off on break here, so I understand the timing could be better, but thank you all for spending some time with me today. What I'm going to do today is take you through the RightScale platform. I'm going to show you a little bit about what it is we do, how we do it. I'm going to talk about adopting something in this space, a cloud management platform. And we'll wrap up with some steps to put together a plan of how to get there. I'm sure many of you are formulating that right now, have formulated it. And if you don't, you know, talk to Brad and Chy over here. They'll help you get there. But jumping right in, there's been a massive change in thinking over the past 2 years for the enterprise. And Gartner highlighted this in their 2015 CIO survey, which the imperative has become, instead of why use the cloud, why not use the cloud? And this is you sometimes hear as a cloud-first strategy. Make it a point to understand which of your applications are going to be the exception, not the use case for cloud. And this is beginning to adopt very rapidly in North America. And what I've seen here in the local market is that the strategy perspective is on par with North America. North America's had the road rash of the past 2-3 years of adoption. You get the benefit of seeing all the mistakes that were made and developing a strategy from there. In the enterprise IT journey, you know, typically you're starting here, down here with data centers. Maybe you've consolidated with virtualization. You're probably toying a bit with public and perhaps a private cloud. RightScale is primarily working in this space right here, so brokering and automating. So there's a critical step path here, and not all of them are easy, certainly, and that's where we come in. But 82% of the companies that we enterprise companies that we work with are interested in making that strategy a multi-cloud strategy. This is a survey from a survey we put out every year called this is the State of the Cloud Report for 2015. We release it in Q1 of each year, so you can actually download this in its entirety from our website. We survey about 1,000 companies, of which probably a third of those are enterprise by our definition, 1,000 employees and above. So we get a lot of perspective. They're not all RightScale customers. They're cloud users from our house file, but people that have, we've talked to or seen or have attended an event. But you get a wide range of perspective on adoption. There's 8 general reasons why somebody would go for a multi-cloud strategy. They might want to operate anywhere, not to be locked with a specific physical location where they have their data center, to be able to open that up to other regions, other clouds, not have to deal with the politics and the cost of racking and stacking in a region that you're not familiar with to get into that region. Very common use case, hotel groups might have infrastructure locally. Hotel chains are international, and you need to serve that market in a regional presence. Maintaining vendor leverage, so being able to play the arbitrage game. Chy talked about the multi-cloud strategy. What if Amazon jacks up the price? Can you move to Azure? Is that easy? Is that hard? Leveraging the existing investments. You probably have, some of you may have a lot of sunk cost in existing infrastructure, like Chy's 30 racks. That may not grow as quickly anymore now that there's further access to cloud. Optimizing costs. Cloud is a nickel and dime business. So as everything is charged and metered by the hour. Google actually meters by the minute. And cost optimization is incredibly important. If you're not scaling down in a cloud, you're doing it wrong. Future-proofing your cloud strategy. So multi-cloud is also an insurance. So you may say, you know what, I like AWS. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the space. They've got the notoriety. I'm comfortable with the requirements that I've given them, that they can meet those requirements, but I want to hedge my bet just in case. So you may go all into a single provider with the option to move later. Accessing unique capabilities. Cloud is unique for one of the reasons I just highlighted, the ability to provision and deprovision capacity in an on-demand way. And create resilient architectures. I'll talk a little bit about some of the unique architectures that can be created in a hybrid cloud scenario. And then support future business needs. They're moving faster, and central IT has to get out of the way for provisioning. That's when you start getting shadow IT if they remain that roadblock. The business is going to own the initiatives, and IT is going to have to respond as quickly as a public cloud can. I like this slide because this really looks at the equation. You've got a portfolio of applications. You've got a set of requirements filters for those applications. And with a multi-cloud strategy, you now have a variety of resource pools that you may drop those into. And it might be on an application-by-application basis, or you may have a case where an application might span multiple geographies, multiple clouds, a private to a public, whatever the case may be. The traditional model is this in reverse. You've got a data center, and regardless of the applications criteria, you're going to put your app in your data center because that's what you have. A multi-cloud strategy actually turns that around, gives you the opportunity to deploy where it's best fit for the application. Cloud also gives you some unique architectures. So this is an example of a warm DR scenario. Amazon likes to call this a pilot light DR scenario because you've got your primary site and everything's active there, and you may need your data in a second location, but do you want to have all of this other infrastructure running in a hot standby to support that disaster recovery when you need it? Certainly it needs to be there when you need it, but having cloud means you can actually run this and stage this, and your recovery point objective is your replication strategy here, and your recovery time objective is about 5–10 minutes for that infrastructure to launch. Of course, the trick is being able to have a predictable pattern to get that back when it's needed.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So in that scenario, what is it you actually do?
We'll get there. Hold on to that. Hybrid architecture. Cloud bursting is a popular concept. I'm running my baseline capacity in my internal infrastructure, but there may be peak seasonal demands, peak timing demands, where I need additional capacity, typically on the application tier. You are going to want to be cautious and make sure you have a low latency connection, like a direct connect to that cloud provider, or else this strategy doesn't work all that well. But even if your application is less performant, it's still there. Similarly, a split-tier architecture. Being able to design across clouds allows you to do some unique things, like put an application tier in one cloud and have everything else in another cloud. Common use case might be actually having the data residing in a private cloud and running the rest of the front end of that application in a public cloud. And with RightScale, you have access to this. So we support your primary cloud providers and of course, also your private clouds with CloudStack, OpenStack, or vSphere, which I'll talk about in a moment. But just using a cloud management platform means you have immediate access to an entire globe of data centers. Now, the role of IT is evolving, and cloud has demanded that they become a broker of IT services. So you're going to start hearing this term more, cloud service broker. And what that means is you've got your users on one end, and you've got those that really care about how they're using it on the other end. And it's these guys that really need to dictate how the users are going to consume cloud. It is very easy to do shadow IT in a cloud environment. All it takes is a credit card. Central IT has got to take ownership of that. And increasingly what we're finding is that central IT is taking ownership of that. 62% are making more than half of the cloud purchases in an organization now. And this is growth over last year. Furthermore, even the business units are now recognizing central IT's role in procuring cloud again. First of all, it was IT just gets in my way. It's going to take me 4 to 6 weeks to requisition what I need, and I need it tomorrow. I'm just going to throw down my corporate card and go out to Amazon. But now the business units are stepping back, and even those that have gone that direction realize, well, we might have got ourselves in a sticky situation. So this is actually 2014 to 2015. You can see quite a substantial jump. A cloud management platform is the foundation for this, and that's why RightScale is here. A lot of people think cloud is just an API. That's not true. Cloud is actually not a new technology. Cloud is a new way to deliver services. It is a new requisition and delivery strategy. The API is that technical function to do that. But if all clouds behave a little differently, even public clouds don't behave the same. AWS, for example, has a synchronous API. Azure has an asynchronous API. That's one of many differing resource behaviors that RightScale helps to smooth out, to give a consistent service delivery experience across those providers. It's also a myth that a lot of people think that if I develop a good strategy, even if I go all in on a single provider, I'll be able to move that later. But given the last 2 points that I've made, the reality is that those providers are moving up the chain quite quickly in the effort to lock you in to that provider. They're going to release new features that are attractive, but those features are going to be bespoke and custom to that cloud provider. And I like to use this, especially in the APIs here. You know, I can't do the Aussie accent either, so. But you know, in the U.S. we say I eat chips, and we're talking about crisps, and you're talking about fries. They're called fries. Living on the first floor or playing football. You know, those are the same words, but it's really a different language. It means different behavior. There was another one in there about going to public school that I cut out. You know, the USA guy had a gun in hand. Brokering cloud services. So this is where we fit in the equation. And there are 3 key components to the product. There's self-service. And self-service is the idea of how do we make cloud easy to consume. So we follow the mantra of centralizing complexity. That is cloud management. That is where you'll find all the buttons and dials to connect and consume cloud for the IT organization. And then there's self-service, which is distributing simplicity. How do we make that easy to consume in a way that is friendly to that consumer so they're not going to go around us? Then there's the cost management side of things. So cloud analytics is that cost management side, because in a nickel and dime business where things can come and go in a minute or an hour, you're going to need not only to account for what you have at any given moment, but also what used to be there and is no longer. We do this across public cloud providers, private clouds, and VMware, soon others. We have our UIs that are built on top of an API. If you want to use a different service catalog portal, you don't have to use ours. Just plug it into our API. Common use case here is actually plugging in an ITSM tool like a ServiceNow. So somebody could go through a ServiceNow portal and provision their cloud, RightScale orchestrating on the back end. We have our cloud management UI, which is where guys like James will spend most of their time. And we'll have you have the cloud analytics UI, which is typically a managerial view. Show me at a glance what is running where, who does it belong to, and how much does it cost. We abstract the APIs to the cloud provider. So designing against RightScale means you are designing in an abstract way the first time. Integrating an existing system to the RightScale platform means it's integrated to your portfolio of clouds. And that's a really key piece. You're going to want to design and deploy once to be able to go anywhere. Let's get into a bit of the product now. And I'm going to answer your question. RightScale is your single pane of glass to all of this. When you centralize complexity, the first step is to see it all in one place. You plug in your clouds to RightScale, you plug in your VMware environment to RightScale, everything shows up side by side. If any of you have played around with Amazon Web Services, you'll know that if you log into their console, they take very much a virtual data center view to things. You'll go to the drop-down menu and say, show me everything in Sydney. Now show me everything in Singapore. Now show me everything in US West. That's a different model from RightScale. RightScale's model needs to support hybrid implementations, where you may have an application that spans multiple data centers, multiple geographies, multiple vendors. So we converge all of that, and we give you the ability to create a more application-centric view of your infrastructure. Self-service means you can take this and you can provide a nice catalog to your consumers. This could be basic cloud services. Give me a Windows or a Linux VM and let me select which region to put it in. You may choose not to let them select which region it goes in. If they're going through AWS console, they have access to everything. If you want to just say you can only launch it in Sydney, you can restrict that access. It's about giving essentially what amounts to a custom platform experience to your consumers. It could be individual instances. It could be n-tier architectures. You need a 3-tier architecture with IIS, .NET, SQL Server, and mirror pair. That can still be a one-click scenario. RightScale's orchestration can take that application, provision the requisite infrastructure, and stitch it all together in a way that makes it a working system without human intervention. Design it once, be able to deploy it without interruption. Self-service has emerged as table stakes. For organizations that are delivering infrastructure in less than an hour, self-service is the strategy. Because IT and a ticket-based system cannot keep up with the cloud. And you can see it's a massive jump from 2014 to 2015 in terms of enterprises that are doing this. This is actually just the subset of our respondents, 1,000 employees and above. You'll also need to start standardizing. So standardizing and templating your configurations will mean that once you design it, even if you're going to deploy it to one cloud today, you should have the option to move it later without having to redesign any of it. So this may be configuration scripting. This may be referring to a RightScale multi-cloud image, which is essentially a way that RightScale can speak to the cloud-native image types. Amazon has AMIs, VMware has VM templates. They're different image types, and we still have to play by the cloud rules. It means the configuration management on top of that to be able to deploy that in a consistent way no matter where you put it, and make that application behave as if it was one unit. Now, once you've built that, you've got a great reference architecture. The next time you need that IIS .NET SQL Server stack, you can redeploy it as a system. Containers, new strategy. So you're probably starting to hear a lot about Docker. They're the darling child of the container world right now. That promises to be another way to standardize through development through production. Right now, the current state is there's 1,000 ways to use Docker, and everybody thinks they've got the right way. But we are using Docker in production ourselves. We've got some content on our website if you're interested in container strategies. But that's another idea around standardization. Docker and containers, they deal, let's take Dante's Inferno. You've got the circles of hell. Docker will deal with the application circles of hell. RightScale deals with the infrastructure circles of hell, the lower level. A good example of standardization may be digital campaigns. So 10th Wave is a digital agency, and they do work for Google, eBay, many of the largest enterprises. And what they've found is if they can make it modular, they can deploy it faster. So once they've standardized on both their development platform, they can then also standardize on their infrastructure platform. And once they've found a scalable model that works for them in both places, they can stamp it out. So repeat that strategy indefinitely. Purpose it by supplying different parameters and inputs, but keep the baseline configurations the same, standard, easy to support long term, and the ability to make just the right bespoke modifications to support that client initiative. One way you do that is through the use of a RightScale cloud application template. This is that orchestration container. A RightScale cloud application template is both declarative and an imperative workflow. You are going to define what it is that you want out of that cloud application. From a self-service perspective, what you want to make available to your consumers to be able to self-select. Hey, this consumer can select between these 2 clouds and these 3 regions. They can't change any of my networking settings. They can't change any of my infrastructure sizing. I'm going to deal with that centrally, but I'm going to make available something in a templated fashion that they can consume from. The imperative workflow is then how that's going to be set up and stitched together. So we call that RightScale Cloud Workflow Language. We're not very creative on the name there. But essentially that means I need to deploy my 3-tier Windows stack. And in a principal mirror scenario, obviously a principal has to be there before a mirror can start replicating. So RightScale, make sure my principal is there and not only provisioned, but also properly configured before that mirror connects to it and begins its replication strategy. So being able to define those ahead of time means it's consistent. So now finally addressing your question on disaster recovery, a cloud application template can cover all of that in a single click. So that recovery scenario can be codified into one template that can be launched and provisioned on demand.
So how does the data get synchronized or replicated to the cloud?
However you want it to be.
Fine, so you don't do that. And then obviously if I'm going from VMware to Amazon, you don't take care of the conversions either.
It's not about conversions. It's about creating a platform that doesn't mandate a conversion. So you're not going to take a VMware template image and make that into an AMI. Because now you have 2 images in 2 different places. You change one over here, you'll have to change it back over here. That challenge grows exponentially. The more clouds and the more regions that you add.
Sorry, not quite what I meant. Once you replicate the data across, so if I'm running VMware today, which most people are on-premise, I want to do DRM cloud, and I'm targeting one of these, a non-VMware cloud. I've got 2 problems. I've got the replication problem, which you said is my problem, I have to deal with that, fine. And the second problem is the target's not in the same underlying format, container format, etc. So I need to do some conversion of the underlying data, and you don't do that. What you're providing is templating.
We're providing the configuration management and the orchestration layer to deploy that in a way that can be consistent across both clouds. So it's portability, it's not conversion. If you're designing for portability, then you don't have that problem. Now, what you're asking for is Chy's magical unicorn approach. There's not a whole lot of silver bullets here. There's a lot of lead ones. And it's about making that right design choice to begin with.
Well, we talked about disaster recovery, which is I have a running production system over here that has some data.
Right.
Now I need it running over here.
Right.
So I still don't get how you do that.
Please, James.
One thing to think about this is the RightScale approach is a little bit different and asks you to change the way of thinking about it. Instead of trying to take the system from over here and put it over there, make sure you know how to build the system in both places quickly.
Yes, and that's fine. I have no trouble with that. But there's a troublesome thing called data.
The data you can still have replicated between 2 sites, however you would be doing that, whether it be
Sure. So what you're doing though is you're doing the provisioning of the provisioning of the infrastructure in the cloud, but But the bigger problem, I mean, and that's pretty straightforward. The bigger part of the problem is actually getting data from one side to another, bringing the systems up, etc., etc. That's fine. I understand what you're doing now. It's fine.
Okay. We'll keep cranking. We can talk a little bit after as well if you want to go a little deeper on that. Those systems can be configured with your existing assets. You might have existing AMIs in Amazon. You might have existing VM templates internally. If you have done a conversion strategy, you can orchestrate that conversion strategy as well. There is such thing as VM import from VMware to Amazon, not the other way around, so be careful of that. You can only get AMIs back to VM template if you originally converted them from VMware. Not all clouds support that. So that's why we're starting with portability as the table stakes before we then go down lower than that. There are also configurations that are portable. A RightScale server template is a configuration management container for that asset. That has what we call a multi-cloud image, which is an image of a different type that matches in each region. Think of it like a table of contents to look up the right region at the right time. This cloud application template may also include custom platform as a service, something that you might develop in-house or something that's provided bespoke from a cloud provider. You want to use Amazon Redshift or Kinesis or Google BigQuery or SQL Azure, which is a hosted SQL Server service in Microsoft Azure. That's great. You should be able to orchestrate that. You should be able to create reference architectures out of that. You will then know, though, that those reference architectures you're creating are going to be locked to that cloud provider and are going to be using bespoke services in that cloud provider. If you want to design for portability, you're looking at infrastructure as a service. But a good good cloud strategy will include infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. Technicolor is a good example. Technicolor does a lot of pre- and post-production for major movie studios. If you watch to the very end of credits, you've probably seen their logo there. And they too were going into a cloud-first strategy, and they needed to centrally design something, they call it Constellation, that can go anywhere. They're actually using 7 clouds right out of the gate. They cut a 4 to 6 week requisition cycle down to 10 to 15 minutes for redesigning that provisioning process in a way that they could do it anywhere and do it repeatable. So it's actually, the twofold benefit is if you design the process to be repeatable and modular from a configuration standpoint, you are getting the side benefit of being multi-cloud right out of the gate. We are seeing that development and test is leading the charge, and I'll talk a bit about continuous delivery and integration in just a second. Legacy apps are falling behind, frankly, as they should. Big monolithic, non-cloud friendly licenses, that type of thing. That being said, we do see quite a bit that are coming across on the legacy application side, primarily in the disaster recovery use case. I run this all in my data center. It's Sage accounting software, and I need it to be made available in the cloud of my choice during a disaster scenario. So we do see them, but this is what people on our survey were focused on, and development test is a great low-hanging fruit. So thinking about development test, you've got continuous build, continuous integration, and continuous delivery. Now basically what that means is your developers are going through a process where they are they're building and developing. You want them to be focused on that development side of it. They shouldn't have to worry about the infrastructure. In each one of these steps, in blue, they're going to take some type of action or the tool of their choice, Team Foundation Server, we use Jenkins a lot, is going to take that action. In these dark blue is where RightScale would take some type of orchestrated action. Developer checks in source code. RightScale provisions the build infrastructure to deploy that server. If RightScale can even do that, we actually run an N+1 scenario for our build environments. So we always have one extra build server waiting. But if suddenly 100 of our engineers checked in code, we're obviously not going to be able to build all of that at the same time. So the early bird gets the worm, and then we'll scale up to accommodate the additional capacity there. But the idea is to do that in an automated way. So they are not waiting. Developers don't like waiting. That's their coffee break. You can shorten that for them. And then, of course, killing it when it's done. Deprovisioning that infrastructure is incredibly important. If you're not scaling down, you're not doing it right. You might as well just be in VMware. Audi embodies this. So Audi wants to build the R8 of websites. I saw one going ripping down Pitt Street yesterday. Beautiful car. And they also embody what was becoming known as the blue-green deployment cycle. Blue means something failed, it's going to revert back to the last step and allow somebody to correct that failure. Green means it's past the step, it's moving on to the next stage of going through this process here. So a lot of you are probably already doing something like this in some way. The trick in cloud is that you can automate more of it. So their big benefit here that they wanted to get out was driving that release cycle down. Their charter was, let's get down from a monthly release down to releasing daily. Right now they're about every few days. They also want to be able to predict that cost growth. So that's where RightScale Cloud Analytics comes in. Over 3 years, what does this look like if we scale up to X capacity? One of the next projects they're doing is their connected car backend. So if you drive an Audi, your car is soon going to be connected to the cloud. It's going to be managed by RightScale. You also need to audit everything, not just what's happening now, but what happened in the past. In a land of disposable machines, RightScale gives you a semblance of persistence. Things come and go. They may come and go in minutes. RightScale can give you your current snapshot as well as your historical snapshot and trends. So a lot of this is internal. This is what our network map. This maps how security groups and ports are open to the world. Quick visual of how to, this is about the sexiest picture I can put up of audits here. But a quick visual of what the surface area of your applications are in the cloud. But it also means being able to track back those situations where you'll need to find that user that did something out of band. And RightScale can track everything down to the user that took a specific action, even in something like logging into the server. Analyzing costs, being able to quickly chart this. I like cloud analytics. I like to call cloud analytics the CIO dashboard. It's everything at a glance. What is running where? How much does it cost? Who does it belong to? What business unit or cost center is it a part of? And what tiers of the application are involved? So this is not where you're going to live from an administrative perspective. This is where you're going to get your high-level picture. This is where you're going to set your budget alerts. This is where you're going to set your cost quotas on those different teams. Send out your weekly reports to finance. Get that dumped out into CSV. Oh, and by the way, we do suck in all the public cloud provider costs. There's about 10,000 prices in our price book. So whatever we see, we'll immediately account for that. You can also set hourly run rates for showback and chargeback on your own internal infrastructure. Office can help you figure out what your fully burdened cost is on service delivery by the hour in a VMware cloud or private cloud.
Excuse me, question. Do you have an agreement with those cloud vendors about that, or are you just scraping the information from somewhere?
Little column A, little column B. If they provide something for us, we will use it. Like, for example, Amazon finally released an API into billing data that we can consume from, but most of the other providers don't have that. What we actually look at is what the platform sees. It's a poll base. We poll every 20 seconds or so. So we will see things that are coming and going, even if they were launched outside of the RightScale platform. I'll get back to that. Analysis to action here. So analytics are great, but not if you can't do anything about it. So you've set up your report on Amazon reserved instances. That's a purchasing model that you pay a little up front to get a reservation to run something at a cheaper cost. If you don't run the instance type that you paid for, you're basically wasting money. RightScale can detect where your waste is. On a monthly basis, you're wasting $500 because you're not running a full utilization on the RIs that you purchased. We will identify which VMs those are, give you a quick and easy access to go and fix that scenario. So adoption. 3 steps to adopting RightScale. The first step is connect your cloud. The second step is to manage it. The third step is to provision it. Connecting your cloud means plugging in your credentials. You've got your Amazon subscriptions, your Azure subscriptions, you've got your VMware environment. You'll drop in our little appliance. That appliance, by the way, only takes about an hour to deploy. Then RightScale sees all of it. We will pull the APIs, we'll see what's running there. Cloud analytics starts ticking away. You'll start to see metadata about those clouds, and then we'll give you the ability to start organizing that. Tagging it, common tags across all providers, clustering that into what we call deployments, application-centric clusters of servers. That gets you into the ability to start filtering for showback and chargeback. The cost visibility starts ticking away. You'll immediately be able to see about 60–70% of the modules that we use to filter data in cost analytics that are not custom tags is cloud instance metadata, meaning you don't need to do anything else but attach your credentials to the product in order to be able to see it. So very easy path to adoption there to start getting visibility in your cloud costs. Obviously, the more you adopt RightScale, the more contextual those reports get. You'll also be able to start segmenting who has access to what cloud. RightScale has a hierarchical structure, allowing you to define parent and child relationships between accounts and invite specific users to leverage specific clouds connected to them. You may also then tie this into your single sign-on system. So you have common single sign-on for all of your cloud providers. There are other capabilities that you might immediately get out of this, like audits. You'll be able to see everything that's ticking along, and that's going to start showing up in the audit histories. Next, you're going to start managing your individual VMs. So the first step is managing the cloud. The second step is managing the VM. RightLink is an agent that can be installed on each VM. It's a lightweight agent that is responsible for a few key functions. It's basically responsible for getting information about that VM back to RightScale and governing access to that VM from either RightScale or actually just from SSH or any other connection that you want to make to it. It also gives you the ability to start executing scripts on taking remedial actions, which leads me to monitoring and automation. RightScale has a cloud-agnostic monitoring platform, OS and process-specific metrics. That data is collected by RightScale, but more importantly, you can act against it. Not just seeing it, you want to act against it. So for your Tier 1 and Tier 2 type support responses, you can actually automate the remediation of several scenarios just by taking this second step. So let's say IIS fails on one of your web servers. Rather than that creating a ticket in a system for somebody to RDP in and go and restart IIS, RightScale already detected that it failed. Why not just have RightScale execute a PowerShell script on that VM to restart IIS? Now, if that doesn't work, maybe you have a tiered policy. If it's just a web server, so after that, if it doesn't work, we'll throw it away, we'll grab a new one. We have a template that'll drop it right back into its deployment. We're going to relaunch that VM entirely. Now, if that doesn't work, RightScale can even persist across VM relaunch. If that doesn't work, now you're going to notify your SWAT team, Office. And they're going to get in there and they're going to figure out what's going on. Now you have a Tier 3 issue that requires some serious brain power to figure out what's going on. Audit trails start ticking along. These are persistent even among relaunches. We have histories of servers that can stretch back years and years and years. You need to be able to go back in time to see what happened. If something fails overnight and nobody caught it and those VMs are gone, you still should be able to go back and see what happened to prevent that from happening in the future. Now provisioning. So once you get through this, you want to be more contextual to who's using what. You're going to start provisioning through the platform. That makes those audits more contextual. What users are using what cloud in what way. And then you'll take that to the next level, which is self-service, making that simple for your consumers. So putting together a plan. You're going to start segmenting your application portfolio, and this is where Office will partner to help. You're going to look for really 3 key characteristics. Is it cloud ready? Do you know it can run on a distributed system? Does it demand elasticity? Even if it's not quite cloud ready, should it be made cloud ready? Or is it traditional, legacy, monolithic, off-the-shelf stuff? Usually the last to go. And when you're starting to evaluate applications, you're going to look at both business impact and technical requirements. The business impact should say, should we put this into the cloud? And the technical will say, how do we put this into the cloud? And you're going to choose the ones with the best ROI. We use a numerical matrix typically, so this is a bit sanitized for a PowerPoint deck. But we'll rank everything 1 to 10 based on where it falls on the spectrum of many different criteria, both business and technical related, to ascertain how to get the best impact from what applications. So we'll look at things like time to market. Is that important for this application? It may not be. We'll look at things like, what geography does this have to be in, or is OpEx desirable over CapEx? So there's a large list, and this is just a subset of what we would look at to evaluate the business impact. And then there's the technical impact. What are the security requirements? Where does the data need to reside? How easy it is to replicate from one to another? Where do we want to, how are we going to deal with things like, session affinity and the load balancing? Is the application friendly to moving to cloud from a licensing perspective? A lot of commercial off-the-shelf stuff is socket-based licensing. You don't know how many sockets you're getting in a public cloud, so that may not be the right fit. And then what we do is we'll put together a nice matrix. So together we'll then decide, here's your magic quadrant of your quick wins, high business impact, high technical fit. Let's focus on those, and your nightmare scenarios where you'll probably leave those for the very end, or leave them where they're at and not touch them. These you may refactor because they have a high business impact but low technical fit. And these you may hold off and high technical fit but not a whole lot of reason to move. So RightScale and Office can help throughout this entire journey. From that strategy and portfolio assessment through the implementation, long-term support and managed services, expert advisor on optimization, HA and DR strategies, security, and of course, training along the way. How do we adopt DevOps as an organization? How do we move in that cultural shift to better adopt cloud? And that's where we can come in and assist. So with that, thank you very much. Again, appreciate the time. Any questions, I'll be here after. Any comments, and especially compliments, you can address to me. Criticisms, you can address to Chy. And thank you.
We actually have time for questions now if you guys want to have any questions and discussions. We've got a few minutes of that. Then we have lunch outside, which is just finger food. And then after lunch, if you want to stay, there's a technical session where we'll actually do some logins and demos. Matt's actually going to log into them, create servers and all those kind of things that you want to see.
Yep.
Look at the portals in detail, all those things. So those are all really nice slides. If you want to get your hands dirty, after lunch is where to go. So any questions?
Just with your OpenStack integration, do you care whether it's the VM integrated OpenStack or Red Hat or what?
Good question. We track the trunk release, open source trunk release of OpenStack on the Nova API. The Nova API is the OpenStack API. And if the implementation from the commercial provider is the Nova API, it likely works. It's not part of our test suite typically, with the one exception of Rackspace's commercial flavor.
Can you expand a little bit further about the Google management? That's obviously not here in Australia yet. Timescales, and what does that look like for Australia?
Yeah, Taiwan is as close as you can get right now for Google's cloud. I'm not at liberty to discuss the timeline on their entrance to this market, but let's suffice to say they are very interested in this market. So I would expect that to come soon. That's really a future-proof question. So you want to use Google, but they're not in region. Use another cloud that is until you can use Google. Any other questions? Hit me with a hard one. Please.
I've got perhaps a more difficult one. We talk a lot about locking and avoiding locking. And so very clearly we can see using the RightScale platform helps you avoid that locking to cloud providers. Just interested in RightScale itself and your ability to move out of RightScale to another cloud management platform.
Great question. So if we weren't locking you in a little bit, there's probably not a whole lot of value in what we're doing, right? That being said, your server configurations are all in source form. Your server tier configurations in the server template are probably shell scripts, PowerShell scripts, might be Salt or Ansible or Puppet or Chef or SCCM that you may already be using. So you're going to own all of that. You're going to know how to recreate a server with or without RightScale. Cloud application template is a RightScale specific domain, RightScale domain specific language that we've created. We actually looked at using some of the other languages out there and couldn't find anything that really had everything we were looking for. It is very readable, and again, everything in source form. If you've seen Chef or Puppet, you probably can read right through a cloud application template pretty easily. The point is everything is self-documenting. So if you are handing it off, the reins off to another person, they'll be able to read through what you already have. And if you're migrating off the platform, you'll be able to read through what you already have. But you'll obviously lose things like automation rules. You'll lose things like access to the analytics portal. You're still going to be spending money. You just won't be able to see it all.
One of the difficulties with templated solutions running across multi-cloud is you can end up with a lowest common denominator approach.
Yep.
So, one of the real values of platforms like AWS and Azure, particularly both of those, is that they've got a bunch of very sophisticated services. You mentioned one, Redshift. How do I go about using Amazon or Azure and getting the value out of their high-level services while still using your templating and the ability to move between platforms?
It's likely going to be an all-inclusive strategy, and I'll use RightScale as our own example. RightScale primarily uses infrastructure as a service because we are cloud portable. While the majority of our VMs live in Amazon today, we do have our tentacles and subsystems out into all of the clouds that we support, and we do reserve the ability to move RightScale to another cloud if we needed to. So that is true. That is a lowest common denominator approach, and in some cases RightScale is going to elevate specific cloud capabilities like auto-scaling, self-healing, and those things into the RightScale platform to give you a common way to do that in each cloud. If you want to use specific platform services, we use Redshift ourselves as the back end to cloud analytics. We have made that very specific choice not to build our own BI database with the inherent risk that we cannot move that out of Amazon readily. If we did want to, then we would probably look at something like a Vertica database, another type of BI database that we could deploy on an instance as software and leverage those instance services. So use everything that you would like to use, and a cloud application template can provision and manage directly through the native APIs and native cloud services. If you have a pattern that may include SQL Server as a service through Azure and VMs running .NET, then that's still a pattern that should be easily deployable, and that can go into self-service natively. So you can still create patterns with those bespoke services, but you are taking that inherent risk that you are using something specific to that provider. So our approach is you shouldn't have to just use lowest common denominator services.
I'll ask the evil question. The service here is fundamentally about minimizing my risk of exposure to changes in variance between a whole range of different cloud providers. So how do I manage that with you if you become my single lock-in broker? How easy is it for me to port across to another service?
Yeah, similar to that question there. Everything is in source form, readable, and you'll be able to take all of that out. You may plug in existing systems like Puppet. Let's say you're using Puppet Enterprise and you've got all your Puppet manifests. Those are going to be portable anyway. You're already managing those directly. Let's say you're using RightScale native server templates. Those server templates are built in common shell languages. Shell, Bash, Perl, Ruby, Python, whatever fits. Obviously, you're going to lose the nice ability to arrange those in a cool series and be able to execute that as part of a plan. But you can easily take a Bash script and take that elsewhere. Now, RightScale specific, the big piece around lock-in would be using our API to use existing systems. So let's say you want to integrate an SIEM system or an ITSM system or another type of monitoring tool or a finance tool or whatever the case may be. Obviously, you're going to do that with the API. And if you do that with the API and you wanted to move off of RightScale, you're going to have to do that rework to cut out the API there. So that's going to be one of your bigger points of lock-in. But the way VMs are configured, the patterns that you're using are all readable, are all in source form. Even the agent that we put on your server is open source. We don't want you to put anything on your server that you can't inspect. RightScale itself is obviously closed source and we're software as a service. But anything that is running for you guys, you have access to see.
So I'd have the ability to keep the lights on until I could work out another way of harvesting all that information.
Sure. If you severed the connection to RightScale today without any forethought, all your servers are going to continue to run. Obviously, automation rules that you may have put in place are not going to trigger. Or self-healing rules. That example I gave of self-healing IIS, that's not going to trigger because we're not going to be watching it anymore. But everything is going to continue to run. Your servers are continuing to be your servers. They live in your cloud. You can still go through the cloud consoles. Even if you go through a cloud console, especially vCenter, you're going to probably have a lot of infrastructure that's going to continue to be managed with old processes through vCenter. You know, that's still visible to RightScale. So we're going to continue to see those things coming and going. You'll get some benefit at that level 1, connection of cloud to RightScale. And that would obviously go away if you sever that connection. But if you go through vCenter, you could terminate something that RightScale had launched as well.
I've got a question. How does RightScale compare to something like Cisco's Intercloud?
Quasi-competitive, which is the case with a lot of those. So Cisco Intercloud can be a collaborative play. You could use RightScale to orchestrate Cisco's Intercloud services. I would say the biggest comparison is that Intercloud is a lot of slideware, and we've got something you can plug in today. There is some overlap, but as what we've seen is technically, most of those companies that are coming from infrastructure and virtualization management are really still focused there. That's also, VMware's vRealize suite. We would be competitive with vCloud Automation Center and the ITBM suite from, cloud analytics perspective. But they're very much interested in managing VMware. And if all you're trying to do is manage VMware, then you should probably use that product. Cisco, likewise, is very much private cloud focused. If all you're really interested in is that private cloud piece, we may or may not be the best fit for you. But if you're interested in that portfolio piece, and especially with the eye towards transitioning more of your infrastructure towards public, that's a much better approach.
Do you see any standardization happening in the cloud management platform space? For instance, would you ever expect a competitor's cloud management platform to be able to hook into a service provisioned with RightScale to be able to manage it?
Not sure I understand that question.
Okay, so the ability to monitor and trigger scripts that you configured through your RightScale platform, and you need that RightScale platform to be able to provide that sort of managed service to your service you provision through RightScale. Those APIs that are being used are obviously custom to RightScale. Do you see any standardization happening in the industry over a period of time that's going to allow cloud management platforms and the infrastructure provision through those platforms to start to cross-pollinate?
There are academic exercises. One that's fairly known here is Oasis Tosca, which is an orchestration standard that's emerging. Kind of like OpenStack. They're largely academic exercises at this point. Standards would make our life a whole lot easier. Our approach is kind of Amazon's approach of we'll just keep building until something may emerge. Amazon, in doing that, their API has emerged as a de facto standard in some cases. You can run an OpenStack with the Amazon API. So we're going to keep cranking, and if something emerges like that, you're going to see us, add in and track to that. But for our purpose and focus, we don't really participate. We're part of those organizations, but we're not actively, pushing them.
Is that it? Anyone hungry? So we've got some finger food out the front. You can, by all means, continue to chat, talk to the guys from Office and to Matt, and then in about 5 minutes to 1, we'll start with the demo session where we'll log in, actually show you some of the portals and the screens, and you can get down to the really detailed questions at that point. So
we'll do it live.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.